Hi, my name's David Hatcher. I run a management consultancy called Baringa Partners. We have offices in London, Singapore, Germany, Australia, the Middle East, and the US. Might ask what a management consultancy is. Effectively, at its most simple level, it's we work with other businesses or governments, agencies to help them improve their businesses. Effectively, they come to us with some problems or opportunities, and we work through them with them to help them improve what they're doing. We really do three things. We help them determine what their strategies or their investment decisions could be. The second thing we do is we help them identify new business opportunities, and then we work with them to make the necessary changes to land those business opportunities. And then the third thing is we help them structure and run their businesses more effectively. And that really means typically doing one of two things or both at the same time: improving their customer service for less cost. That's really the kind of inner workings for business. Within the consultancy that I work in, I run the energy and natural resources sector. So that covers everything from oil and gas, metals and mining, power generation, how power is traded on the international markets, all the networks. So that's how energy goes from power stations to people's homes, and then all the retail side of things. So the organizations that sell power directly to customers or businesses. Most of the work we're doing at the moment is fundamentally driven by trying to address climate change. So most businesses and governments worldwide are working out a way of how do they generate power, but without producing carbon, as the world is trying to decarbonize. And here in the UK, we have written into law that by 2050, we will be net zero. And what that means is we won't emit any more carbon into the atmosphere in any given year than we take out of the atmosphere as well. So that is a huge challenge from where we are today. It's going to cost globally trillions and trillions of dollars. It's effectively the same scale of change as what you might have heard about the Industrial Revolution that happened about 100 years ago. It's the same kind of level of change in the economy, but over a much more compressed time scale. It kind of needs to happen over the next 20 years. So it's a very interesting place to be, or at least I think it is. In working through that with our clients, so our clients can either be government agencies, they can be regulators, so bodies that determine how power markets work, or the businesses that face into that. Much of the drive is driven from working out how you move to renewable technologies. So renewable technologies are typically either wind power, solar power, or hydro power. So we're working with oil companies who previously, they used to extract oil out of the ground, they used to refine the oil, and then they used to sell the oil, whether it be in petrol or aviation fuel or all the various chemical byproducts. They're looking to make substantive investments into renewable technologies so that they can move how they used to produce their power, which was largely by the sort of hydrocarbon-based oil products, into renewable technologies. They want to invest in building wind farms or invest in energy coming from hydroelectric dams or by large solar arrays. So we're working through with them how they go about doing that. That's a substantive strategic shift for them. The challenge with renewables is also, or any renewable technology, is that it's what's called intermittent and distributed. By intermittent, I mean when a coal-fired power station or a nuclear power station or a gas-fired power station is on, it's producing energy at a very consistent level, so it's easy to control. But as you can imagine, with a wind farm or a solar array, the wind blows hard sometimes and it doesn't blow at all in other times. And then sometimes with a solar array, it's not always sunny, it's cloudy, or sometimes it's a sunny day and then just a cloud moves across the sun, so all the energy levels drops. So that's why it means it's much more intermittent. So it's much harder to control, and that brings complexity to the power markets. The other side of things, it's much more distributed. So a large nuclear power station or a large coal-fired power station is typically being replaced by lots of different smaller scale wind farms or solar arrays. So they're distributed all around the country. So that much more sort of fragmented power production combined with then the intermittency that goes with it makes for a much more complicated energy grid. And it means it's much harder for organizations to trade in those products because it's much more spiky in terms of how the power is produced, and it's much harder for grid organizations. So the organizations that own the energy grids, that's how the energy is transported from the point it is produced to the home or business, and then they're controlling the various power surges and making sure that a consistent amount of power comes to people's homes or businesses when they need it, is a much more complicated activity. I guess that's good for us as a business in its extra, being that its increased complication means that they need lots of help. And a lot of the help is typically around understanding the commercial structures that they can look at in the market. So how are they going to make money with that extra level of complexity and the new opportunities that arise? How are they going to control their risks? So they might invest lots of money, but then how are they going to ensure that they actually get their money back over a prolonged period of term, and how risky might that investment be? And also, how are they going to control the energy assets themselves so that they can ensure that there is that kind of as much as a continuous flow as can be. We're also working with a lot of firms on energy storage. So effectively very large batteries. That means that sometimes if the wind's blowing very hard and it's a sunny day, we can be producing more energy than we need, and it seems a waste to then not use that energy and then to on another day have to be burning gas which produces carbon a few days later just because we couldn't store the energy. At the moment, the best way globally to store energy is still a very old-fashioned way, which is when there's lots of energy, you turn on some pumps and you pump water uphill into a reservoir, and then when you need that energy later on, you let the water drain down through some turbines which produce more electricity. That's called pumped hydro. So it's effectively creating a huge battery by purely pumping water uphill. That's a very old-fashioned way of doing it. And now there's much more new technologies coming available to make batteries of much greater scale. So organizations are trying to work out where they place those batteries and how do they then make money out of them, what are the commercial arrangements that go with it. And some of you might have an electric vehicles, you will know that that also has a battery within it. And some organizations are looking at how they can also use that battery that's under the car to also help power people's homes. When there might be spikes in demand for energy, then actually they can flick the home to draw off the car's battery, because obviously if it's sat on your driveway or outside your house and it has power in it, it could be used then. So there's all sorts of opportunities that organizations are looking at that as well. We're working with firms like Amazon and Google that obviously as they provide technology services to, I've no doubt many of you and your families and other businesses, they have huge what are called data centers where they have all their servers, and these data centers can consume huge amounts of power. So we work with those organizations to understand how they can procure that power, typically from renewable energy sources. So they go, rather than going into the traded markets, they go direct to wind farm generators, and they agree commercial deals to say, we will take all of the power from this wind farm for say the next 20 years. And then they agree a price, and that can be for several £100 million over that kind of period. And then they can lock in that energy that that wind farm produces to power their data centers, so that they know that that power is coming from a green energy source, which is obviously what they want to do, being that they've also committed to be carbon net zero over sustained periods of time. And then lastly, we're also working with governments. As I say, the government has mandated in law that we in the UK will be carbon net zero by 2050. Scotland has mandated by 2045. Other countries have also placed similar sorts of goals. But frankly, no country really has a very clear data-led coherent plan to do that. So we're working with government agencies to work out how they can take all the various forms of energy that produce carbon. So it might be from stop burning oil, or the production of cement creates huge amounts of carbon, or the creation of steel produces huge amounts of carbon, driving your car and lorries creates carbon, heating your home. So when you turn on your heating and your boiler in your garage or utility room fires up and it burns gas, that creates carbon. How are you going to take all of those various things and decarbonize them? You're still going to want to heat your home. How are you going to do that without burning natural gas? So we're working with the government to work out how they do all of those different things. In terms of the base skills that we look for in our business to be an effective management consultant, in my personal view, I think the best people who do this job are very rational and logical, so they're good problem solvers. They can logically break down a problem with a client and work through methodically what are they going to do to make the improvements. So they're very structured and analytical in their thinking, so they can also look at large volumes of data and understand what that data means, so they can then be data-led in any decisions they make. But they can also then balance that by being very personable and have high EQ, which means that they can get on well with people, that they can read a person's vibe and mood, and ultimately the client can build a good personal relationship with the client, because fundamentally people still want to work with people that they like and enjoy spending the time with. So if you can balance that sense of problem solving, the rational, the analytical, and the data led together with that personable and creating an affinity with people, then you can be a very good management consultant, in my opinion. I hope that's been useful and mildly interesting. Thanks.